Hello and welcome to the Royalty Exchange Marketplace. This video is to walk through the two major components of the marketplace, which consist of the auction house and the secondary market. So with that, we'll go right into it. This is the home page here, and to get to both the auction house and the secondary market, you want to select our listings option at the top menu here. So selecting that will take you to the overview page. The overview page simply lists a summary of both the auction house at the top, and then scrolling down a bit, the secondary market on the bottom. Let's first look at the auction house, and to do that, you just select the auction house tab at left. Now, the auction house is where we list individual royalty assets that investors bid on in open live auctions. All bids are public, and bids are accepted for the entire asset only. Each auction has only one winner, and the winning bid is a binding legal contract with the seller to acquire the entire asset. So it's not like you can fractionalize ownership of anything that you buy here, okay? Real quick, all the assets on the Royalty Exchange Marketplace in general, but also, of course, on the auction house, goes through a rigorous evaluation process to ensure the seller has the rights to place the asset for sale and to verify the financial history of each asset. Once we complete the due diligence with the seller on the details of the asset, the seller then signs a listing agreement, and the listing appears live on the site, as you see here. Let's get into the actual listings themselves. So selecting any one of these will get you to an actual listing. This is a live auction that's taking place right now. What you'll see here is very first thing you'll see is just some real basics, the current price, theoretical IRR, total bid so far, time left in the auction, and watch or bid button here. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. But what I first want to show you here is the overview that you'll see just below, okay? This box right here that you see lists the same information for every listing, okay? Starting price, bidding increment, scheduled end date for the auction, the dollar age of the asset itself, how much the asset has earned in the last 12 months, the term of the investment. This one's a life of rights asset. In other cases, you might see a 10-year term asset instead. Who the royalty distributor is, the rights that are included that you're buying, public performance, for instance, the interest of the right that's being acquired. So this in this case, it's the songwriter interest of the public performance royalty. There's a track list that you can view to see every single song that's available. When the first payment will be made once it's once you own it, and once you can then start collecting royalties. The frequency at which that'll happen, in this case, will be quarterly, and a little detail about the buyer's fees that you pay once you acquire the asset, which we'll get into more in a second. Just below that, you'll see this standard grid. This is a little more of a visual representation of exactly what it is that you're acquiring here. So in this case, there are no copyrights included. That's actually very common. These are the public performance royalty right, not the mechanical or the sync royalty rights. Those are faded out, as you can see, as well as everything on the sound recording side is faded out. That's because those are not included. This gives a little more information about the sources of the royalties that you're able to get into, and then finally more again about the distributor. And then there's just a sort of a prose detailed description about the catalog, the financial highlights, the key drivers, and whatnot. These are all things that you can read through for every auction that is there. All right, so that's the overview tab. Next is the financials. The financial tab, what you see here is a compilation of all the relevant financial details about the royalty stream in particular. Only earnings relevant to the asset for sale will be presented. So for example, if the auction is for 25% of the seller's royalty stream, all the financials presented will reflect the 25% of the historical earnings, not 100%. A spreadsheet is here with raw data that's provided for additional review and analysis. You select that, you can download it, and it gives you a breakdown of every single song in the catalog and its earnings. What follows here is more of a summary, right? These are the earnings by quarter. We typically do that for the last 3 years that we have the data for, and you can see a quarter by quarter breakdown of the total catalog earnings. Further down, you'll see royalties by source. These are the different formats that contribute royalties to the asset that is for sale. And what you see here is radio, international, streaming, other, and so on. This will change based on the asset. Sometimes it'll be streaming first, sometimes it'll be international first, for instance. Below that table, you will see a pie charts, right? One is for royalties by source for the last 12 months, and then royalty source all time. All time means going as far back as we have royalty information for that asset. So you can see historically how it's earned, and then you can see how it's earned most recently. Both are important details. We did the same thing by the song. In this case, this is only a 2-song auction, so you're only getting those 2 songs. Typically, if there's more than that, we'll list the top 5 songs. All right, not every single song. Again, you can look at the raw data for that if you like. This will have a pie chart. This breaks down which of the 2 songs are earning the most. As you can see here, one of them is pretty dominant than the other, both in the last 12 months and again by all time. All right, and then finally, there's some more information here about what the theoretical IRR means, how we calculate it, And then we have a theoretical cash flow table at the bottom that looks at not forecasted, but just a mathematical sort of idea as to how the earnings might be expected to contribute to the owner over the next 10 years. And this is based on a standard formula that's applied to every single asset, not an analysis of the asset itself. So that is the financials tab. There's also a fact tab here. This gives you a little bit more information about some of the more logistical components of bidding on the auction and the asset itself. There's a media tab where you can play YouTube videos of the songs that are actually included, which is always nice. And then you can kind of get a sense of sort of the auction history, how many people are bidding for it right now, and so on. All right, so let's now talk about how to actually place a bid. Any investor who's registered with Royalty Exchange can view the details of the listings that we just went over. But you have to be a verified bidder to actually bid on the listing, okay? And there's a couple ways that we can do that, and I'll get to that in just a second. But first of all, what you'll see here is you'll look at the main details, the current price, the current theoretical IRR, number of bids, time left, and if you want to, you can select watch or bid. Now, selecting this allows you to just register for the auction first. Okay, it means that you're going to get notification as to any price changes, any bidding activity, and so on within the auction itself. It does not require you to actually place a bid. Okay, so to register for the auction, there is a confirmation step that you can do via SMS or a voice call. It'll confirm that you actually want to receive this information, and then you'll start collecting those details. Okay, again, this does not commit you to bid. To actually place a bid, you must complete our one-time verification process. When I say one-time, that means you complete it once and then you're verified for any auction in the future, not once verification for each auction. Okay, so there is a verification form. It is here. You fill this out. It's very simple. Just ask a couple of basic questions about you and your motivations for investing and so on, and then a couple of terms of use and privacy policy agreements, and you submit that. Following that, there is a very short 5-minute phone call with a member of our staff where you have to verbally confirm a few things, legal matters, things like that, that make sure that you understand that you are placing a actual bid. We recommend that you complete this verification process before you find an asset that you're actually interested in acquiring, so you're not at a disadvantage against other pre-verified bidders when things are moving rather quickly. Okay. Each listing has a starting price, which is the lowest price the seller will accept in an auction. That's how all auctions are listed at the start. It'll be listed under an awaiting opening bid status until a verified bidder places a bid at or above that starting price. And once the starting price is met, the auction clock begins. As you see here, this is a live auction. The auction clock has begun. It is worth noting that if you are the person who places that opening bid and you ultimately win that auction, you will not need to pay the buyer fees that you see here, the 1% of closing price or $500, whichever is greater. You will not need to pay that, which is a significant advantage to placing the first bid. Okay. Now, once the first bid is placed, as you see here, our system takes note of all the auction activity in real time. It notifies you, if you're registered, of other investor bids on the auction. And there's a few other small little things I'll kind of point out here. I can't show them right now on this particular screen, but there is a few things you can do as a bidder. First of all, there is proxy bidding. This is a feature that allows you to set a maximum bid for an auction. And our system will then use your proxy amount to place incremental bids based on the minimum bid increment as noted in the auction. It will place these bids on your behalf to ensure that you remain the highest bidder up until your limit that you set. Any tiebreakers will go to the earliest set proxy bid. Okay. Second is the 5-minute rule. The 5-minute rule is when if a bid is placed basically in the final 5 minutes of an auction, the auction clock will reset to 5 more minutes and begin that 5-minute countdown again. There's no limit to how many times this 5-minute rule can go into effect. And in some cases, when there's a lot of bidding activity, it'll reset several times. The intent of this is to make sure that all bidders have the ability to express their bidding intent without someone sort of sniping the auction at the last second. Okay. And then let's see here. Finally, I'll just note that there is a post-auction process. You can see that here in the tabs below. Basically, if you win an auction, the Royalty Exchange account manager will guide you through these steps of the closing process and ensure a smooth, speedy transfer of the royalties to your account. So I will say that if you want to get some more information about all these details, you can read this post here. It's how to read Royalty Exchange listings. This will break down into far greater detail all the steps that I just kind of pointed out, and you can review those in specific detail that way. There is another useful guide that you can read called How Auctions Work. This kind of goes into more details about the registering, the listing, watching our bidding, the proxy bidding, the 5-minute rule, the post-auction, all the things that I just sort of broke down to you as well. So that is how those processes work in the auction house. Okay, next we have the secondary market. The secondary market is where we list any asset previously acquired on the Royalty Exchange marketplace, mostly assets acquired in previous auctions. Here you can make an offer directly to the asset owner, usually another investor just like you, and that owner can accept or reject or ignore any of these offers as they like. Asset owners can also set an asking price for the catalogs they own, which, if that asking price is met, will immediately initiate a sale. There's typically well over 100 listings to review in the secondary market, as you can see as I scroll through this rather rapidly here. All right, that's quite a bit more than the 3 to 5 that you might see on average in the auction house. So it gives you quite a few to review. However, they're not all actively for sale. So while you can make offers on them, the owners may not be interested. Let's get into the actual listings themselves. The first thing you'll see here are the featured listing section. These are just the listings that have active list prices set. That means that the investor who owns these assets would accept a sale on these prices as they are set. There are some that are below that are also have listing prices set, but the featured ones are the ones that are the most, I guess, are the closest to the benchmark that we set as being a likely reasonable offer. Okay, so with that, let's actually go into one of the listings themselves so you can kind of see how those look. You'll notice that basically this contains all the same information that you might have seen in an auction, right? It still shows the last 12 months. It shows the dollar age. There's a few additional details like 3-year average earnings. Slightly different looking charts, but the same idea. You have the last 12 months earnings breakdown, the last 12 months song breakdowns. You see recent earnings by the last 3 years. You'll see the same thing with the included rights, that sort of thing. So a few other things here that you might see though as well. One is, well, let's start with this. You see an analyst benchmark price. This is a not a recommendation. It is an algorithmically derived benchmark where we basically provide some guidance on what we think might be a fair price based on the catalog's performance. Okay, that benchmark is based on the median multiple paid for other catalogs with similar characteristics previously on the marketplace. It's not based on an individual analysis of the particulars of that particular catalog. It's also worth noting that that analyst benchmark price is only visible to our All Access investor members. Others will just see sort of a couple of asterisks there and note that you need to become a member of our premium membership to actually see that. Okay. Now, there's a few other things you can see here. You can see how many bids it has received, this asset has received, and for how much and when. So you can see that people have been making various size bids for this particular catalog, and they've either been declined or they've been expired. If it says expired, it usually means that the person who owns it just ignored them. Okay, so those are the details of the actual asset itself. Again, you can see much of the same as what you can see in the auction house. So let's go back to the secondary market for a minute, and I'll show you a bit how you can filter through all the assets that are listed there. Here you have some filtering capabilities, right? It sort of defaults up here to the most recently added, but you can default, you can change the default and change to things like highest dollar age if you want, and now it changes the order of the listings. There's a number of different commands that you can sort by: lowest dollar age, most offers made, shortest years remaining on the term, highest list price, lowest list price, etc. Once you've done that sorting, you can then filter them or condense them even further by basically minimum last 12 months earnings. How much? I don't want to look at anything that's less than say 18,000 or anything that's more than say 60,000. If that's within whatever your budget, whatever your allocation preferences are, you can then filter them further that way. You could also look for minimum dollar age. You can scroll down to say, I only want to see 6-year dollar age, and it'll reduce the results to just those that meet that criteria. And then you could even, if you wanted to, reduce it down by a number of offers that were made. And then finally, you can do things. You can only show certain things. Like I only want to see, say, life of rights assets. In this case, there's only one that meet all the other criteria. You could always change them as you go along to increase the number. Okay. So that is how it is basically filtered. So let's say you find one that you like. Okay, here's one that you like. How to actually bid on it? There's 2 ways you can bid on these. Okay, one is to make what's called a manual offer, and there's different ways of doing it. One is you can see that there's a list price set. You can simply select buy now, and by doing so, you are then making the offer based on that list price, which is basically automatically accepted. Okay. Second is to make a manual offer. Okay, this is the offers one here, the second unshaded button, and here you just say, here's how much I offer. Okay, and it'll expire in a day, but you've made that offer, and we will send that offer to the owner. And again, if you're an All Access member and you can see the analyst benchmark, you can make an offer at the analyst benchmark price. Similar to how the list price works, it's not automatic. The owner can still accept or reject it, but it gives you a sense of, this is what our benchmark price was, and you can either accept that directly or try to make it a little bit above or a little bit below here in the manual offer side. So those are your options on that sense. So that's how you make a manual offer, okay? Another option is to place what's called a standing order, okay? And we're going to get to that right here. See the standing order tab? This allows you to basically set an offer that just sort of sits in the background and will automatically match that offer to catalogs as they appear that meet your criteria. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit more so you understand. But basically what you see here is all the standing orders that are currently on the site right now, when they were made, and the details for which they were made. To place a standing order, you select this button right here, Place Standing Order. If you're All Access, you could pick either a term asset or a life of rights asset. If you're not an All Access member, you can only select a term asset. Okay, so this is the term asset. And what you do basically is you say, I only want to look at assets that are a minimum dollar age of, let's say 4.10, right? 4.10. I want to pay a multiple of 6 times its last 12 months earnings. And over here in amount, I don't want to pay more than $20,000. Okay, so this will limit the assets as they come in to those criteria. All right, and then you place the term order here. Once that's placed, as new assets are added to either the secondary market or that come through our auction system, you will automatically be matched, or at least your offer will be matched to those assets. The owner of the asset can then choose to accept or decline them. All right, they usually have 24 hours to do so. And that is basically how the automated investing process works, the standing order process works. So let me just get back out of all of this. You can go back to the home page anytime you like, the listing page rather. So that's it. That's the auction house and the secondary market. Those are the two major components of the royalty exchange marketplace where you can acquire royalties. We hope this guide has proved helpful to you and a good overview of each. These overviews really are just the first step, though. We recommend that you register to watch an auction before you actively participate as a bidder, or maybe make a few manual offers in the secondary market before you place a standing order. These are all things that I think would be helpful to pretty much anyone. So finally, there are some good investor guides. This is our investor guides page that you can look at. There's a lot of articles that explain an overview of how the marketplace works, how royalties work, what is dollar age, what's the difference between the different types of royalties. And it also allows you, via this button right here, to register for our live investor Q&A sessions. We hold these monthly, once a month. And basically, they're open office hour sessions. You can ask any question you like about any of these details. It could be the same question we've heard 20 times. Doesn't matter. We'll answer it 20 times. That's what it's there for. So you can select that link, register for the next one that's upcoming, or for one in the future, if it's easier for you. And we'll be happy to have you on that call and talk to you there. So that's it. Thank you again for your participation in Royalty Exchange. We're happy to have you as a member, and we're happy to answer any questions at any time. Thank you.